Well, hello there again, Wargamers. Yes, hello once again, friends and fans. Raptor here. Welcome back to Wargame Red Dragon. That's right. What the deck? Yes, what the deck's going on here? Well, we're talking about Infantry today, and this is going to be a long one, so get your popcorn and get settled in, because we're going to have a good time here as we look at all of the riflemen available for the Americans. And of course, this deck spec will be very basic. It will just cover exactly what these units do, but not necessarily how to use them. We'll cover that, of course, a lot later. It's 1,500 units to go over, but we're just basically covering the types, such as ATGM groups and man pads and assault engineers and SMAWs and what they all do and what they cost and how they're transported. So let's get right into it. The very basic unit for the United States in terms of riflemen is simply put, the rifleman. The rifleman here, available in 1975, so basically available for all years, is the basic rifleman armed with the M16, the M72 Law, and the M60 stationary machine gun. This makes them a very formidable force when it comes to fighting in defensive positions, and also a basic attack unit. They're very capable and very strong in good numbers. They're also transported by the M113A1, as you see there, this small APC armed with a M2 machine gun on the top, the M2 Browning, and that you can also see the stats on that. To put it in your deck, you can see there's 65 kilometers per hour, the stealth is poor, and it has a pretty poor autonomy for fuel, so when transporting these troops, this would be probably good for getting them less than halfway across the map before you'd want to disembark, hide these vehicles, and bring the troops up. Now keep in mind, riflemen are 10 points, and the transport is 10 points. If you had 4 of these, you quickly do the math. 4 times 10 is 40, plus another 10 is, there's 80 points right there you could throw down if they're destroyed. So that's not going to be good if you lose those. So keep in mind that transports should be hidden after dropping off the troops. And speaking of transports, this is somewhat of a slightly faster transport and is a prototype. Actually, it's not at all. Oh, you know what? It's the same as it was in air-land battle. There's really no differences between these two other than the paint job and the year that they were produced. There's really no difference to them at all. However, there is a difference between this and the M113A1 Dragon, which fires an ATGM on it as well. We're not talking about the units here. These basic riflemen are the same, but the transport does have an M2 Browning on the top of it, as well as the I'm sorry, I should say the M47 Dragon, but it is the M113A1 Dragon that this is the name of the vehicle. Now, the speed should always be the same. It's just the armament that changes between these, so there's no big difference here other than A, the year that they're available, and B, the weapon that they're armed with, so keep that in mind, suppression, such like that. This Dragon, by the way, highly inaccurate. Only 3 shells on it, really worthless unless you're doing something possibly in a close range defense against slow enemy units that are basically unarmed and or worthless. Could be good for hitting fleeing vehicles, but you really need to know how to use this Dragon before you go using it. Don't use it as a long range ATGM. The ground range is only 1575, but we'll move on from there to the Super Dragon, which is somewhat of the same thing except just more accurate. 50% accuracy and a longer range. Again, no real changes between these, but again, you can correct me at any time down below. Again, we're not going to go over every single small detail, but we're kind of just going over what the transports do and what the units do. So please, help people down below with your tips and tricks, and everything's subject to change, again, as the armory is always ever changing, and there may even be new units when you're watching this video. So always check your armory and check your decks before you go out every time in battle. It should just be like when you fly an airplane. That's exactly what you want to do. And speaking of airplanes, we have a helicopter here, at least, not an airplane, but it is armed with a M60 on the side of it, so very Vietnam-like. 15 on the helicopter, 10 on the troops. So very fast transport, and similar as what we covered in the previous video, is very good for moving your troops around quickly, but you probably want to get it off the front line. Another thing that people usually do with these helicopters after they're done with them is they'll leave them around in areas of the map. Now, for 15 points, if you had 2 of these, you have 30. That's about the basic price of a recon. If one of these units on the flank gets knocked out, it's kind of like tripping a tripwire. If they kill one of your helicopters as it's hovering far away from the infantry, it'll give away the enemy position. But one thing you don't want to do is sacrifice the Black Hawk, because this bad boy has a twin M134 minigun, 6,000 rounds. That is a beast that can kill vehicles, and this helicopter is capable of doing 300 kilometers per hour and can go real deep into enemy lines. And keep in mind, these are amphibious because, well, they can fly, as where the M113A1 also is amphibious, but it's very slow. Not recommended for crossing rivers, but or rather lakes, large lakes, but only for crossing rivers and such like that. Keep in mind, infantry cannot, absolutely cannot cross rivers on their own. That goes for every single infantry unit in the game, as far as we know at this very moment. During the making of this video, only infantry can be transported across rivers when being, or bodies of water, while being in a transport that's capable of doing so. Now, one very special thing about Wargame Red Dragon is that the infantry is so important to this game and so important to the basic military fighting force that there's very different types of riflemen. You have riflemen who are armed with equipment from 1975, and you have riflemen who were updated in 1990 to be more of a fighting force. Here you can see they're armed with the M16, the standard weapon, as they were back in 1975. No changes there. So the stats are very much the same. In fact, we'll go ahead and compare these. Yeah, we don't need to compare. But what we do need to compare in our minds, though, is that they do have everything the same except for the AT4. The previous M72 Law had 6 rounds of 66 heat rockets, and it now has, in the 90s, 83mm times 6, and the accuracy has also been greatly bumped up, and there's many changes to the numbers, which I don't want to get into your head because, again, they could change at any time. But keep in mind, the 90s troops, the more modern troops, are going to be better equipped, not only with faster, or rather more accurate weapons, but faster transports as well. As you can see here, back in the 70s, they all had the armored transports, and now in the 90s, they come with the Humvee there, and also then right back down to the M113 again. Humvee, not capable of amphibious crossings, however, now it may be in real life. However, according to the game, in the lower right-hand corner, under, I should let you see that there, under where it says the armor on the right, where it says front, side, back, and top, you see amphibious, and it's orange at 55 kilometers per hour. Not too bad, but definitely don't get caught out in the open with that. Make sure it's safe to cross before you do so. And again, the transports for these are very much the same until we get up to the M2 Bradley infantry fighting vehicle. This is a bad sumbitch right there. That is a scary day for a Soviet or a Red. The M2 Bradley IFV is capable of taking out enemy vehicles with its tow, which has a 50% accuracy rating. But the real mean boy on there is the Bushmaster, the kinetic energy area of effect round. It's one thing I should have covered much earlier in the game, too, is kind of letting you know exactly what those things do. Heat stands for high explosive anti-tank, and stat stands for stationary and cannot fire while on the move. So always hover over everything. If you want anything explained to you, like assault rifles, law, LMG, it will explain everything in great detail as to what it is. So that's why I'm not going to exactly cover it now. However, I may mention from time to time what these acronyms mean, and not only what they mean, but also what they mean in the game. So their definition and also what they mean in the game. And every single thing. Again, the bigger, you know, every single thing can be covered, and we'll explain everything. So great detail here. It even tells you that the simple square and an X is a rifle team. It tells you that it's for the United States, the cost. Everything is covered except for the name, which should explain that it's riflemen from the 90s. But you can basically understand that after clicking around. The updated M2A1 Bradley has a greater accuracy on the tow, as it is now the I-tow. You can see the difference there is that there's a little spear on the end of it, which just shows that it's about as best they can do, at least in that weird silhouette form, to show that there is a change to that. We use the comparison menu to compare these two. As you can see, there's no real change. Oh, let's look at these. No, you know what? I can't compare the... can only compare infantry to infantry. But as we quickly look, there's no change to the Bradley there. Only the tow system changes there. And also, I would like to mention that the Bradley is not amphibious, and the years are different there. There's a difference in the years, but there's no difference between the vehicle other than the tow weapon. Another good way to transport them is with the M2A2. Now, here we've got a nice big change here. You've got the tow 2, 70% accuracy on that. Again, an updated weapon system on that, available in 1988, and not amphibious still. So again, another step up in the Bradley weapon systems. All right, UH-1, you know the drill there. They can be transported by the Huey and the Blackhawk, and those are differences in speed. That's it for the basic riflemen. Now we should probably cover light riflemen, as they are somewhat of a different group. Mountaineers and light riflemen are somewhat the same, but somewhat different. We'll go over those right now. Light riflemen, all the methods of transport are self-explanatory at this point to you, except for the Chinook, which is just basically a heavily armored weapon. So if the enemy thinks that you're going to attack that way, you can just fly by with the Chinook. However, it's a little risky. The speed on those is 270, but they're a very, very capable unit of dropping your friendlies behind enemy lines. So that's about it there. Regular infantry doesn't get that, only the mountaineers and the light riflemen. So I should cover, by the way, that's the difference between the light riflemen and the mountaineers, by the way. Light riflemen are armed with an M16, an M47 Dragon, and an M240 stationary. The mountaineers are armed with an M60, and that's very good for stationary as well. 7.62 on that. There's a greater accuracy on that M60, better than the M240. So the mountaineers are very good defensive units and or attacking units as well. Just keep in mind you're going to need a good number of them, and the mountaineers also carry 12 M47 Dragon rounds. So if you somewhat come up behind enemy tanks with these light riflemen or with these mountaineers who carry more, just again look at these values. They may change, but the basic differences between these is light riflemen from the basic group gets an M16, an M47, and an M240. The ones from the light riflemen from the 90s get the Super Dragon, which is heat and guided, GUID, which stands for the missile's guided. Its operator needs to stand still and aim at the target until the impact. So if you fire and then move these units, they're not going to hit. Also, the mountaineers are just basically an even more deadlier version of that. Think of light riflemen on crack, or steroids with a Chinook possible transport. All right, that covers light riflemen 90, mountaineers, regular riflemen, and riflemen from the 90s. We're now going to cover the badass of them all, the U.S. Marines. Oh yeah, these boys here are very, very, very capable troops, very capable in any defense or assault position. And they're a group, they're just a crazy amount of badasses too, because you get 15 of them. I should mention that unit sizes does help in their longevity and ability to stay alive on the battlefield, and also their fighting force. Some, as you can see, I don't know if it actually tells you a total unit count. Actually, I should say where it says strength at the bottom, that's the number of men in the squad. As you can see, a rifleman squad has 10 men, and a Marine squad has 15. That, as you look back at the light riflemen and the mountaineers, that has also changed as well. You get 10 of those. Light riflemen, you get 10. Mountaineers, you get 15. So that's another difference too in the troop count. Again, everything's subject to change, so check it. All right, back to the Marines we go. All right, so the very famous Marine landing transport, the LVTP-2, is armed with an M2 Browning. We'll cover the transports in a minute, but we should go over what the Marines have to offer. Number one, 15-man squad over the Rifleman 10. You also have the Colt LMG CQC, which stands for Close Quarter Combat. Contrary to other machine guns, this weapon can be used in close quarter combat, meaning house-to-house fighting within a city block. This makes the Marines' ability to fight off the enemy in a defensive position absolutely unmatched, at least anything in the U.S. armament. No one can defend and attack like the U.S. Marines. If you get them in an enemy-held village, they can fight very ferociously from house to house, and they can also defend house to house. If the enemy seems to be landing and surrounding the Marines, they're very capable with other weapons systems to fight back both enemy tanks with the heat and stationary M72 Law, but the Colt LMG is where they really shine, as well as their number and their transport as well, which of course, well, that thing looks like a boat, doesn't it? It's exactly what it is. The LVTP-7 is capable of amphibious transporting at 55 kilometers per hour, and the A1, the only difference there is that it is a little bit faster by 5 kilometers, a little less on the fuel capacity because of that speed, but it can also fire a Mark 19 grenade launcher, which has AoE, or area of effect. 400 rounds on that. That is a badass. This thing seriously can drive into a town and suppress any moving forces while the Marines encircle them. These two in combo is probably your best bet when it comes to really causing some pain to the enemy. Other than that, the Marines can be transported by the typical Huey. They can also be transported by, or I should say, the 90s Marines can also be transported by these same three. However, the difference for the 90s Marines versus the regular Marines is that they have an updated law. The M72A4 law is more accurate and also has a longer range and different suppression values and whatnot, but just think of it as slightly better. You get 2 less rounds, but greater accuracy with it, and they get the Mini-Me. Comparing these two, you see the standard Marines get the Colt LMG with 1,000 rounds, and the mini-me with 2,000 rounds, both close quarter, and no sacrifice to those ranges. The only difference between these two then, and of course we don't want to get too specific into it, but the rate of fire is greater and whatnot. But anyway, just remember any newer or more modern infantry will be better in some way. It's kind of up to you to decide exactly what. So in this way, most U.S. troops, or at least all U.S. troops, are armed with the M16. The real differences between them are their secondary and third weapon. I should say their secondary weapon is really here. You have the primary weapon, which is the M16. You have the secondary weapon, or the support weapon, which is the mini-me. And then you have their specialty weapon, which in this case is the Law, as where other squads get the Dragon, or as we'll see very shortly, the Stinger. Marines also can be, in the 90s, can be transported by those same two transports, the Huey, the twin Huey, which is actually, I should mention, is more speedy than the regular Huey, and also has a minigun on the side of it rather than the M60 that standard infantry gets. So that's it for basic U.S. infantry. That's really infantry on infantry or anti-tank. We're now going to cover the baddest ass of them all for taking out enemy troops, the assault engineers. Assault engineers are basically sappery groups. As you can see, this troop here has the M202 Flash napalm stationary launcher with 8 rounds that can really walk up to an enemy held block, fire a few flame rounds into it, and clear them out. It's also capable of doing that in forest, and these are fantastic for ambushes. They're no special forces, and there's only 5 of them, so they're not really going to be good in a situation on their own. Well, unless they're if they're against an enemy logistics troops, they may win. But if they're against special forces, even though they have this special launcher, they're still going to go down. So these are really infantry support weapons. These assault engineers should be used in a main assault with other troops like light riflemen or riflemen in general. And these troops can be transported via the M11A3 and the Huey and the Blackhawk and the twin Huey even. Alright, moving on, we should cover some more additional badasses when it comes to getting behind enemy lines for unsupported special operations. Delta Force is the last line that you got to call. 10-men squad? Well, it looks like it's more than that, doesn't it? Maybe the strength is different. But anyway, their training is elite. The better they're trained, the more damage they deal with given weapons, from lesser to better trained. They're classified as militia, regular, shock, or elite infantry. These are elite, baby. 1979 they're formed in, so keep that in mind. They have the M727 carbine, the carbine version of the M16. They also get the M60E3. They're special forces as well, as the marker shows up here. And also they have the M72. You can get Delta Force in both the Chinook and the Humvee variant, so keep in mind that the Chinook probably want to call that out earlier before the enemy's recon net surrounds you, but of course many of you players are capable of other things. So Delta Force is extremely amazing. They're really great because they have they're very small and an amazing amount of stealth. Good, but that means so much in this game, because if you have 2 Delta Force behind the enemy lines, that's the equivalent of having a Nighthawk or something behind enemy lines, because you can cut off supply routes, you can blow up enemy tanks, and these are real good command hunters. So that's exactly what you want to use on that. Now, when it comes to defending those village positions, however, as we mentioned earlier, if you have the assault engineers clear a village, or if you're holding a village on your own, the enemy may try to bring in some sort of helicopters. And if you are just arriving with only infantry, these are the troops to do it. The LAAD Red Eye, or the man pads, is basically it's an infrared guided anti-aircraft, or mostly anti-helicopter weapon. Not very good here for the Red Eye. It's not very accurate, not very recommended, but that is changing. It seems to be a little better than it used to be. Standard transport supply, go ahead and take a look at those. Then you have the LAAD Red Eye and the Twin Huey, even faster. Then you have the Stinger A. Stinger A here, a little less accurate than the Stinger C, and these are 2-man groups, so definitely not recommended to have them on their own. They need to be defended by infantry and or sneak through the woods. These, of course, can take down enemy supply choppers. They can even, it's more recommended that the Red Eye takes out helicopters and the Stinger A and C take out larger planes. It's definitely possible, and it's been done time and time again. So to support that infantry in the defensive position, use the Stinger C. These also cannot be targeted by seed aircraft because they're an infrared missile, which you can see here, infrared missile, and also the area effect, fire and forget, and stationary. Basically, the Stinger can fire, and then you can immediately run. Perhaps if a napalm bomber was coming in on these troops, they fired and destroyed it and moved out of there before the napalm bombs even hit. It's a possibility, and it's done with your Stinger groups. So a good unit to have on the field to support all the other units we talked about today. Again, in support of anti-aircraft, there's also anti-tank squads. The SMA is something you don't want to mess with if you're a tank commander. These troops are absolutely incredible, at least when it comes to anti-tank. If a group of transports, even the BMPs or BTRs, are driving through an area, SMA is going to wreck them. This squad is capable of pinning down the infantry, while this trooper up front has the capability of taking out, just look at that, 1083 millimeter, 65% chance to hit on that. That is a badass, that is a bad day for the Soviets, or the Chinese, or any Red 4 Op 4. Keep in mind they can be transported by the typical Marine transports, as well as, even though I'm not certain if they're part of the Marines, but you guys can all correct me down below. They do look to be wearing the Marine outfit, or at least the Marine armor. However, a couple nice things. It's a black soldier. It's something we hadn't seen before, I think, until an update to ALB. And also, however, the black guy's not even in the squad. Maybe he's in the helicopter. I don't know. Maybe he's driving. Hell, if I was that guy, that's where I would want to be. I'd probably get the hell out of there after dropping everybody off, regardless of what vehicle it is. Keep in mind, too, some of these Humvees are... Most of these Humvees are armored. I'm not certain, actually, if all of them are. Back in ALB days, they weren't. So let's just take a quick look. I'm actually curious myself. Looks like they do have, for most of groups, anyway, that I've peeked at, they do have an M2 Browning on it. Of course, that can pin down enemy troops, while these guys are getting into buildings and taking out enemy troop transports. No differences between those, but again, remember, there's different ways that you can call out infantry in terms of experience. Elite, trained, whatever you call out, you can see that when you hold over elite or trained, there's going to be different values to what they can do. The chance of hitting the target, the time that they spend being stunned or routed. In EE, routing was a huge thing. Then it was about being stunned in ALB. And now it seems that in Red Dragon, if rockets came in and stunned these troops and they're not able to fire back for a little bit while they're still being shot at by tanks, the faster they can recover and get on the line and take down the enemy, the sooner the better. So we have Assault Engineers, Delta Force, the Red Eye, the Stinger A, the Stinger C, Light Riflemen 90, Mountaineers, Riflemen 90, Riflemen 90, and also the highly recommended Bradleys for AT positions and setting up ambushes against the enemy. The SMA, the Marines, and also the Marines 90 all have been covered. So that's it for the basic overview of infantry. Again, there's comparable units for the Chinese and for the Soviets. For instance, Delta Force for the Americans have an AT weapon that's kind of crummy, but the Soviets get something so much more mean. Oh yes, even the Chinese have it. But we'll go over that in future videos. Until then, thank you so much for your support. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, tell a friend. We appreciate all your support. Again, share this video around. And if you learned something today, let us know down below. And of course, if we missed something, which I'm sure I absolutely have because of these quick overviews, go ahead and let somebody know down below. And also look at your armory, because things may have changed and or transports may no longer be available. Who knows? They could pull away the Twin Huey for Assault Engineers for all I know. But anyway, go ahead and take a look at everything. Of course, check your deck before you wreck yourself. And bring that cornucopia of pain. Raptor here, reminding you to keep the password pin pan strong. Tell a friend, tell a friend, tell a friend, and we'll see you. Bye.